Hey everybody, I am doing a Freemotion quilting tutorial on ribbon candy or crazy eights. You can call it either one. I got a question from Connie about how do I do that? Is it freehand? And if I have any suggestions on how to perfect the technique, and I do. So what I like to do, Connie, is I like to practice on paper. It teaches eye-hand coordination. It also teaches your brain the design so that when you go to the sewing machine, the quilting machine, your brain has already done this design and it flows a whole lot smoother. And then you feel more confident when you're doing it. So let's go ahead and get started. I call it ribbon candy because it reminds me of the candy that they make at Christmas time. So let's do this bigger one right here. I've got rows. I already drew out a grid with pencil and I have my clear ruler right here. All right, so when we start, we are going to start in one corner and we are going to do a half of a loop. Let me do that. So half of a loop, and then we're going to come back and we want to touch that top line. We want to touch this line, and we're going to do a full loop. And then we're going to go back and touch that wide part of the half loop. And then again, you want to touch the side, and then you're going to come around and touch that loop. And then you're just going to keep on going around and around and around. And I'm doing it slowly. I would normally be holding my pencil and my paper would be a little bit different being left-handed. But if I did it the way I would normally do it, I don't think you would get a good visual. And you're not going to worry about if you're not exactly on point with touching. See, this one I missed it a little bit. And when you're actually stitching it, you may go over a little bit, you may go under a little bit. Don't worry about it. So keep on doing your loops, back and forth. And you can see in my grid, I have different sizes of columns. And that way I can practice the different sizes. It's still the same motion though. So as I'm doing this, I'm teaching my hand and I'm teaching my eyes, which is really, you're teaching your brain how to do the design. When I was working full time and I had to go to meetings, or if I was on the phone for a long time, sometimes we had phone meetings, I would doodle. And I always doodled quilting designs. Okay, so here, when I get down to the bottom, I'm going to do one last loop, and then I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to end with a half. So I start with a half loop, and I end with a half loop. Some of them I didn't do great, but that's okay. It's really important not to be afraid of the quilting process. It's fun, it's easy, it takes practice. So let's go ahead and do the little one. The little one, again, I'm going to start just the same, and you could start either side. I could start this side, and then I'm going to start right into my looping. And just keep on going. You're going to touch that, touch the side, touch the widest part. You're touching the widest part of the loop on each side. And then you're going to touch the edge, and then you're going to go back. Touch the edge, and just keep on going. I practice my feathers on paper, and I loved stitching feathers. And it's so much fun to just draw a curvy line and then feather it out on paper. So practice, practice, practice. And you know, like this one is a funny looking one. But when you stand back and see your stitching, you don't see the ones that aren't quite perfect. You see it as a whole, and as a whole, it's gorgeous. There's something about texture that the human eye loves to look at, and then we got to touch it. But we see it, we feel it first with our eyes. All right. And you just keep on going, just practice. And the other thing that I would suggest is having a notebook where you can put your practice pieces in. There's so many different designs, and you can practice them on paper and then put them in your design portfolio, so that when you're ready to do a small quilt or a big quilt and you need some ideas, you've got this whole packet of designs that you have practiced, and you can decide what's going to work best. Okay, now I'm at the end. I'm going to do a loop and end with a half. And there you go. I hope, Connie, that this helps. Go ahead and make a grid. Start doing your loops. Crazy eights or ribbon candy. I like it called ribbon candy. You can see why if you looked at the candy sideways, this is what it looks like. So practice with paper and pencil. When you're ready, we'll go to the machine. And I'm actually ready to go to the machine now. So stand by and we will get going. All right, here I am at the machine, getting ready. I do my Freemotion quilting on my Juki TL98Q. I bought it back in 2008, and it works like a charm. I wear garden gloves. They've got the little rubber dots on this one, but any of them will do. And what that does is it helps me grip the quilt better so that I can move it easier under the needle. So I have a Microtex 8012 needle. That's my favorite size. It just seems to work really well. I am using Aurifil thread. It is a 50 weight, and it works perfect for Freemotion quilting. All right, so I gotta have my reading glasses on, and I like light, lots of light. All right, so to begin with, we're gonna do ribbon candy on here. Get everything set up. First thing I do, I'm gonna start in this corner right here. I'm gonna put my foot down. I'm gonna put my needle in and needle up, pull it back up, and I am going to pull my bobbin thread. So I've got the same color of thread in the top and the bobbin. You don't have to, but if you don't, sometimes the bobbin thread can pop up, and I don't like that, so because it'll show. All right, so then I'm going to put my needle down so I'm exactly where I want to start, and I'm going to take a couple stitches. Okay, and my machine always stops with needle down, which is helpful. So, and I'm going to leave the tails, the thread there, and when I'm done with this row, I will come back and bury those threads. I'll do another knot, and then I'm going to bury it by hand. All right, so we're going to start with that half of a loop, and then once we get over to the left side, we'll start with our first loop. See how if I can do this tutorial, sewing, quilting, and talking at the same time. I'm not sure if I can. So let's see. And then loop around, come back and touch it, and touch the side. You do not want to go super fast. You see how slow I'm going. If I go too fast, I will go over my edges. I won't hit my spot. So I am going to see if I can put my camera a little closer so you can actually see what I'm doing. When I stop, I'm going to stop at a point where I'm touching that loop, and that way when I start up again, it's not going to be all shaky and you're not going to see it. So let me adjust my phone. I need to get a better camera for this, but this is what I've got. Okay, let's see if this shows up better. Get my gloves back on. I've watched people do free motion quilting without the garden gloves, and I don't know how they do it, because for me the quilt slips around and I have to put more pressure on it, which I don't like, and it just is a lot harder. But when I wear these gloves, I can just super grip. Now when I'm stitching, I'm also kind of keeping the quilt a little bit taut. I did a lot of quilting around, all the lines have been quilted, the edges, but I did have this covered. You can see I've still got the outer borders covered with safety pins. But this whole thing was covered with safety pins until I got the basic quilting done, and then I was able to pull all those pins out, which makes it a lot lighter and easier to quilt. Okay, so let's get going again. I hope you can see what I'm doing. It is really fun, and it's so pretty when you get it done to see that texture that this makes. And this is a really easy quilt technique. See, I just went over the line. It's because I'm talking too much. But I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to go back and fix it. It's just barely that I went over. I'm not going to fret about it. But I'm going to be more careful. And just make sure you start heading back before you go too far. I could take that out and do a few stitches. We'll see how I feel about it when I'm done. Okay, I got to adjust. Make sure that if it's a big quilt, you don't want it to be pulling a lot down in your lap. So you want to kind of give it a little bit of extra so that it goes into the machine easier. Oh, and I'm using a darning foot on this. The 2 feet that I use on this machine are my walking foot and the darning foot. Now I do have a regular foot, and when I do regular sewing like clothing or purses, I use the regular foot. And I do have the feed dogs down. Some people actually quilt with the feed dogs up, and I don't. I like to have them down unless I forget to put them down. Okay, so let's go time lapse, get this done. All right, here's the finished. You can see my stitches. That was the one that I did before, a couple days ago. I still have to quilt around the pairs like I did those, if you can see that. I'm pretty happy with it. It's going to be nice to get this done, but I'm going to be doing a lot of the ribbon candy. I like the stitch. I like the texture that it makes. So I've still got these rows to do. So when I get that done, I'll be posting a picture. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for watching.